All right, I think we're back. I don't know what the holdup was earlier. So we had a little bit of a connection issue, which shouldn't have happened. So I apologize for that. But going back to Brandon Cahoe, the addition to him on Alabama's team is it's great for Alabama. And a lot of people want to assume that because he's a 5-star recruit, because he was one of the top inside linebackers in the country coming in, that he's going to make an immediate impact. That's always going to be tough. Especially with guys who are arriving late. Guys who don't get the. I always think of guys who are going to arrive in January. I think they always have the best opportunity to contribute early because they're going to go through the fourth quarter program. They're going to go through winter workouts, spring training. They're the entire summer, and they're building relationships with the team. They're building relationships with the coaches. They're learning the system. They're getting their head in the playbook. They're learning just so much more than other guys are once they get there, whether that's June or even in August. But Brandon Cahoe is going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball here. That he's going to, he's on campus now. He's going through practice. So we'll see how up to speed he can get. But as of right now, I would just think, for depth issues, it's a big help. But I don't know if he's going to, crack the too deep just yet. We'll see how he comes along. But I certainly think, maybe he can make an impact on special teams. He can be a great player for, perhaps a scout team player, emulating some other great linebackers in the SEC that Alabama's going to be going up against on a weekly basis. So we'll see how much of an impact he has, but I think his biggest impact is going to be down the road. So let's keep an eye on Brandon Cahoe down the road. Now, what's this going to mean for Alabama's linebacker class in 2019? Because we've been talking about for so long how Alabama plans on signing maybe 3 inside linebackers. Now they have one currently committed in Shane Lee out of Maryland. We talked about Darian Dalcourt, the offensive lineman that just recently committed. That's his teammate, Shane Lee, one of the top inside linebackers in the country. So what happens next? Alabama's still heavily recruiting Nakobe Dean, top inside linebacker in the country out of Mississippi. He's already taken his official visit to Alabama. Now, he's still going to take some other trips. He still has trips to Georgia and LSU coming up. He's still going to visit Florida State again. He likes all of these schools, and it's very tough to decide which school's in the lead. Now, a lot of people want to assume that Alabama's the leader. Now, there's some people who assume Georgia's the leader. Some people assume Florida State's the leader. It's a long way to go, guys. We can't say that he's privately committed to one school over the other, because I don't think that's the case. And when a kid's still taking visits, still enjoying the recruiting process, nobody's privately committed. I mean, we always talk about private commitments on the message board, and when I like to say a kid may be a private commitment when he sets up a commitment date. So let's say a few weeks, or about a month ago, Jaleel Billingsley, John Mechie, I said that I felt really good about those kids announcing for Alabama. Those kids, I didn't say they were privately committed, even though they were, but I said that I felt like both of those kids would commit to Alabama. They went home, set up a video, then released their video as an announcement. That's not necessarily the case with guys like Nakobe Dean or Trey Sanders or whoever else. It seems like a lot of people want to say are private commitments to this school or that school. These kids are not private commitments. These kids are taking visits. They're enjoying the process. Now, they may have told coaches, hey, I'm coming here, don't you worry. You know how many kids have told coaches that before and gone elsewhere? I mean, it's countless. I mean, it's so many kids have told coaches that. Kids want to tell coaches what they want to hear. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So we've got to be patient here, guys. We got to let this unfold, watch the recruiting process, let these kids take visits. And then when they get ready to announce their decision, say a kid pops up and says, I'm going to announce my decision on December the 10th or whatever day it may be, then we can talk more about, I feel like this kid is going to commit to this school or that school. So let's hold off on these private commitments for now. But as of right now, I do see Alabama really trying to sign at least one more inside backer, possibly two. Alabama's not going to turn down terrible. I mean, excuse me, they're not going to turn down great players. I went opposite there for a second. They're not going to turn down great players. They're always going to take the elite of the elite if those guys are ready to commit. So, I don't necessarily see Alabama saying, all right, we must have two inside linebackers. We can't. We have got to look everywhere. We got to look over, every rock to find two linebackers. No, I don't think that's the case. I think they really want to get one really great linebacker and then possibly add another one that might be just as good. So you look at some of these other guys that Alabama's still recruiting. Some guys who are even committed elsewhere, like Ryan Davis, who's committed to Georgia, still planning on taking an official visit to Alabama. Christian Harris committed to Texas A&M. A lot of people thought he was going to go to Alabama, but ends up going to A&M instead. Henry To'oTo'o, the Rivals 100 linebacker out of California. That's another kid that Alabama is very, very high on. So there's still some really good linebackers that are out there that could possibly end up in Alabama's class. So we're keeping an eye on a lot of these guys. I don't really see any commitments coming anytime soon from those guys. I think we're going to see official visits happen, visits during the season, and then some decisions happen afterwards. So, I think Alabama's still in pretty good shape with, as we mentioned, Nakobe Dean. I still think Alabama's in pretty good shape there, even though it's a long way to go. And you never know what can happen in the recruiting world. Jumping into Alabama's next commitment that we saw here actually happened this morning. Malachi Moore. He is the fourth Hewitt-Trussville Husky to commit to Alabama in the last 2 years. Alabama has two Hewitt-Trussville kids committed in the 2019 class, and Pierce Quick and Paul Tyson, and now two in the 2020 class, and Daz Worsham and Malachi Moore. Not really surprised by this. Malachi earned an offer from Alabama. I believe the first time he earned the offer was in June when he came to the Tides camp. I actually kind of thought that he might commit shortly after that, but held off. Ended up being down in Tuscaloosa for the cookout, the Champions Cookout in July, and then decided to go ahead and announce that decision. He released the top six just a few weeks ago, and so not really surprised he went ahead and committed. I mean, he's got his guys who are, his teammates that are going to be telling him would have been telling him every single day, commit to Alabama. And, even though he felt a little bit of pressure from those guys, we always felt like he was going to end up at Alabama anyway. He's got a really good relationship with the coaching staff. He's a great defensive back, and I think Alabama's still going to watch him a little bit, try to figure out exactly where he's going to play in the secondary. I don't think he's set yet at cornerback. A lot of, he's ranked as a cornerback. A lot of people think, he's definitely a cornerback, but I don't think that's the case. I think, they want to see, can he play nickel? Could he potentially play safety? He's about 6 feet tall right now, about 170 pounds. He's going to get a little bit bigger. Obviously, we can see him easily at 185 by next football season. So, another great in-state kid commitment for Alabama. It's crazy to look at Alabama's 2020 recruiting class, and they already have 7 commitments in 2020 for those guys being in-state kids. So Alabama just continuing to do extremely well in-state. You got to give a lot of credit to Alabama offensive line coach Brent Key, who has done a tremendous job recruiting, especially the Birmingham area. This was these last 2 years have been really good recruiting classes in the Birmingham area, and Brent Key has certainly done a tremendous job recruiting the area and getting a lot of those guys on board. Do I see another 2020 commitment happening anytime soon? Not really. Malachi, as we talked about probably, a few weeks ago, I thought that he would probably be the only kid in the 2020 class to make a commitment. And so right now, probably not. Probably wait until after the season. We may see some 2020 guys visit during the season, maybe ready to go ahead and commit. We kind of saw that last year with some guys that committed during the season. So we'll see if anybody decides to commit this year. But as of right now, I think 2020 probably going to slow down a bit. You already have 7 commitments in that 2020 class, so that's that's a good bit, and we're not even finished with 2019 yet. So already off to a very good start. Number 3 class in the country for 2020. Obviously, number 1 class right now in this 2019 class. As of right now, I want to update you guys on the Rivals top 10. Rivals.com put out the updated top 10 today, and a few guys who Alabama's obviously in my opinion in very good shape with, who made the list. Now there's some guys on there that we're not even going to discuss because they're committed elsewhere and they're not even looking at Alabama, so no point of even talking about them. The number 1 overall guy was Derek Stingley, LSU commitment. Kind of surprised by that a little bit. I thought, watching him at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, very good, very physical defensive back. But we saw a lot of really good players out there, and it's sometimes hard to rank a DB number 1. And I think this is the first time that we've ever seen a defensive back, in terms of in the Rivals 100, ranked the number 1 overall player. And I know he was ranked the number 1 overall player in the last update, but staying there, a big deal. And I think there's some other guys that are really challenging him right now, especially in that top 10, in that top 5. Some guys that are going to challenge him all the way up until signing day for that number 1 overall spot. But some guys at Alabama, in my opinion, in pretty good shape with. Darnell Wright, number 4 overall player. Now, Darnell Wright actually moved down a little bit, and it kind of it surprised some people. He's the number 1 overall player at his position, offensive line. But there was just some other guys who moved ahead of him in terms of their skill. Wide receivers, Theo Weiss, Oklahoma commitment, 5-star wide receiver, moved up to the number 2 overall player in the country. And then Jaden Hazelwood moved up to number 3. He's an elite wide receiver. Has been committed to Georgia for a long time. So had a few receivers move ahead of Darnell Wright. Nothing, I don't think it was anything to do with Darnell, but obviously Darnell's still a very elite player and number 1 offensive lineman in the country. Trey Sanders, a former Alabama commitment, who I think Alabama ends up with in the end. 5-star running back, number 6 overall player in the Rivals 100. A lot of people think that maybe he'll commit pretty soon, but I think we may wait and see him possibly announced sometime in September. Kayvon Thibodeau, I think Kayvon was number 5 overall in the updated Rivals 100. Some people will argue he might be number 1, and he could be. I think evaluations are still ongoing. We may end up seeing him number 1 overall down the road, but 5-star defensive end out of California. I think it comes down to Alabama and Florida State for him in the end. Just visited Florida State a few weeks ago, was in Tuscaloosa back in June. Those are going to be, 2 heavyweights all the way until the end for Kayvon Thibodeau. Another kid that was in the top 10 that has very high Alabama interest is Ishmael Sopsher, 5-star defensive tackle out of Louisiana. I do think that it ends up coming down to Alabama and LSU for him. I know Texas A&M's in the mix as well, but I just think that this is a classic Alabama versus LSU battle. For this, elite defensive tackle. So, we'll keep an eye on Ishmael. I don't think he's going to announce a decision anytime soon. I think he's going to wait maybe till December sometime, after the season to announce his decision. But big target for the Crimson Tide. So that's 4 guys right there: Trey Sanders, Darnell Wright, Kayvon Thibodeau, Ishmael Sopsher. All guys that Alabama is, very high on. They have Alabama very high on their list. So, we could easily see, possibly 2 or 3 of those guys in Alabama's 2019 class. Maybe even all 4. So Alabama's got a good chance, possibly landing at least 2, possibly all the way to 4 top 10 players in the Rivals 100 this year. I'm going to take one question here. Do I think Bama lands Hill? I assume you mean Daxton Hill, the number one safety in the country, 5-star out of Oklahoma. It's close. I mean, it really is. I mean, every time I talk to someone, it seems like it is a neck and neck battle between Alabama and Michigan. Probably the only concern I would have if I was an Alabama coach is he's still visiting. He still has a visit scheduled for Michigan in September. A lot of people thought maybe a decision would happen before the season. It's now looking like it will probably happen sometime in September. If he does make that trip to Michigan, probably a little bit of concern there. But there is some talk about possibly making it to Tuscaloosa for the A&M game on September the 22nd. So we're going to keep an eye on that, see if he ends up making it to Tuscaloosa in the month of September. And if he does, I think that's going to be a good sign for Alabama. When we got cut off, someone had asked me about Trey Sanders. And like I said, I apologize for that. I don't know what had happened. My internet's got a pretty good connection, so I don't know what exactly happened regarding that connection for a second. But Trey Sanders, as someone asked me earlier, do I think Alabama lands him? I do. We'll see when that happens. I think it will happen probably sometime in September. If I were to guess, and I've said this for a while, I think Trey could commit during this live broadcast right now, or he could commit in December. He kind of keeps people guessing. Nobody really knows when he's going to commit. I do think Florida's probably the biggest competition for Alabama, just because his brother goes there. But as of right now, I've had to pick some the school where he's going to end up. I think he's going to end up at Alabama. Let's see. I'm going to take a couple more questions here. Do you think Surtain will see the field this season? I do. I think that we're going to see several freshmen see the field this season. You never know how many kids we'll see. I mean, you go back and look at that national championship game and all the guys that were on the field on that final drive of the game for Alabama. I mean, you had Tua, you had Henry Ruggs, you had Najee Harris, you had Alex Leatherwood, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith. I mean, it was incredible seeing the amount of freshmen that were on the field. Now, probably going to see that amount of freshmen on the field at some point on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I really do think that we're going to see some major contributors this year on the defensive side of the ball. And even the JUCO guy, Savion Smith. Savion's going to make a big impact this year, but we're going to see Josh Jobe on the field. We're going to see Patrick Surtain Jr. on the field. We're going to see Iabi Anoma on the field. May even see Jalen Armour-Davis making some plays out there. But I really, really like Alabama's freshman class, even though it was ranked number 7 in the country on Rivals.com. I still think there's a lot of really good contributors, some guys who are going to make big impacts, and some guys who may have even been slightly underranked coming out of high school. Jalen Armour-Davis, Josh Jobe. Those are some guys that we continue to hear so much about. Coming out of fall camp, and we heard a lot about them throughout the summer as well. So I definitely think that Alabama's freshman class could make a big impact, this year and down the road. I mean, Brandon Cahill, the late addition, he may not make as big of an impact this year, but 2-3 years down the road, we'd be looking at another linebacker All-American in Brandon Cahill down in Tuscaloosa. So I'm going to take a couple more questions here before we get off. Which DTs will Bama finish with? Kind of remains to be seen. There's a lot of really good defensive linemen who are out there that Alabama has strong interest in. And I think they're still kind of waiting to see what happens with some guys that they may possibly flip. I don't know if they'll be able to flip any guys, but they are still recruiting some guys who are committed elsewhere, like Nathan Pickering, who's committed to Mississippi State. You've got DeMarvin Leal, who's committed to Texas A&M. These are a few guys who have continued to show interest in Alabama, have continued to talk to them. So kind of continuing to give Alabama a little bit of hope that they may end up flipping down the road. Now, they may be waiting to see what happens during the football season, watch their their team, see how they do, see how they would be used, and maybe take some official visits before they make their final decision. So I think Alabama wants to kind of wait and see what happens with those guys before they, possibly make a move with some others. Now, Jacquez Sorrels is a name that I would keep an eye on. Plans to announce a decision on August the 27th, so that's coming up in a few weeks. Visited Alabama for the cookout a couple weeks ago, and has really moved up Alabama's recruiting board. He's at a Largo High School down in Florida. A lot of people thought that he was South Carolina lean, and South Carolina is very high on his list, but it looks like it's coming down to Alabama and South Carolina. So really keep an eye out for him over the next couple of weeks. We'll talk more about him on BamaInsider.com on the message board. So any guys that want to come on there, talk to me a little bit more about Jacquez Sorrell, please come on board. We'll talk a little bit more about him. We did see where the big defensive lineman out of Utah, Siaki Akea. I hope that's how you say it. If he's watching this, I apologize if I said it wrong, but that's what we're going with. It looks like he's probably going to decide here pretty soon. And I know there's a lot of people predicting him to Alabama. I just don't see it. And just from talking to different people, some contacts of mine, a lot of people don't really see it happening, to be honest. They think he's going to end up going elsewhere, maybe staying out a little bit closer to home. So even though we'll keep an eye on it, don't really see him at Alabama at this time. Ishmael Soccer, as we've talked about earlier, still remains a big-time target for the Crimson Tide. Doesn't plan on announcing a decision for a while. Alabama has a really good defensive line class, but they really would like to add definitely one more defensive lineman, and they wouldn't turn down two. And so we'll kind of wait and see what happens with some other guys. Maybe they'll get a flip, maybe not, but maybe they'll end up pushing for for some others that I think that they could have a good chance of, like Tuateli out of Hawaii, a guy that has visited Tuscaloosa a couple times. He's still in the mix. And there's some other guys. We'll see some more visitors happen throughout the football season. See what else kind of happens and who Alabama decides to press for. Let's see. Do I think Bama will land Henry Tolatola? Possibly. He's a name that we keep on mentioning on the site as a definite guy that Alabama likes a lot, that they would probably take. Does Brandon Cahoe possibly impact him? I don't know. I think we'll kind of have to wait and see. But Alabama's been recruiting Henry Tolatola for a long time. He visited during the summer. Back in June. So keep an eye on him. I expect him to make it back to Tuscaloosa during the football season or maybe even afterwards. But yeah, I definitely think that Alabama has a chance with him. Let's see. Any JUCO guys? As of right now, probably not. I don't think they'd be opposed to taking a junior college guy, and it kind of depends on what happens with some of these guys throughout the year. Does Alabama end up maybe not getting Trey Sanders and maybe looking at a running back in junior college, or do they miss on maybe the rest of their top defensive back targets and decide to go after a junior college guy? And I think it just all depends there. But I don't think they're opposed to taking a junior college guy. But as of right now, any of the names that we've been mentioning on our board, I don't really see in this class. DJ Daniel is a JUCO cornerback. I think he's announcing a decision in the next week or two. Can't really commit to Alabama right now, but could possibly commit down the road. Just kind of depends on what happens with some other DBs. But I think once he commits somewhere, he's going to stay committed. So I don't really see him in this class. But we may see some more junior college names emerge a couple months down the road. So we'll keep an eye on that. And obviously we'll update everyone on any JUCO guys on BamaInsider.com. Let's see here. Any more questions that we have? I know a lot of you are talking about Jalen Hurts and Tua. I'm not really gonna get into that. I'll let Kyle and Tony handle that on our end. I did get a question regarding Ben Davis. As most of you know, I'm the recruiting guy. I don't really talk too much about the team, even though I follow it. I follow what guys like Kyle and Tony are saying on the Bama Insider board every day regarding practice. I really hope Ben Davis can put it together because he was one of the best football players that we saw coming out of high school, and I saw him at Gordo High School, but I also saw him playing the All American games. I saw him at the Rivals camps. I saw him at the Alabama Mississippi All Star game. I mean, he was still one of the best overall players on the field at every single event that we went to that we saw him. I mean, he was great at the Under Armour All American game. So you were kind of hoping that would transition pretty well for him, and it just hasn't clicked yet. And hopefully it will, because I'm a big Ben Davis fan. Regardless of if he ever becomes a big time player at Alabama. I mean, he's a great kid, comes from a very good family, and wish him nothing but the best, regardless of if he becomes an All-American or if he ends up never starting it down at Alabama. Let's see here. How will the O-line class finish? I think it's going to finish really good. And right now they have 4 offensive line commitments. Do they end up, getting another 5-star, or 2 5-stars? I think they certainly have a good chance to get, Evan Neal, Darnell Wright, Clay Webb. Those are 3 really good offensive linemen that I think they've got a great chance to land. We'll see what happens, but I think Alabama can at least get 2 of those 3. I'd be shocked if they only got 1. I think they do get at least 1 of those guys, but I would be shocked if they don't get at least 2 of them. What are the chances? We still Trey Sanders back. Excuse me. I mean, as I've mentioned a few times already on the show today, I mean, I definitely expect Alabama to end up with Trey Sanders. Kind of a long way to go. He's still taking some visits. He's still going to kind of enjoy the process, but I think if they can go ahead and get him on board and keep him on board, it'd be huge for Alabama. Getting Trey Sanders to go along with Keelan Robinson makes a very, very special, running back class. Alabama, not really adding a lot of wide receivers this year, but getting some good skill guys on offense at the running back position, at the quarterback position, would be a big time boost for the Crimson Tide this year. All right, I think we're about to wrap things up. We've we kind of talked about, we hit on a lot of different things today. Which if you didn't get a chance to see the early part of the video, we talked about Darian Dalcourt, the new offensive line commitment out of Maryland. We talked about Brandon Cahoe, what kind of impact we see him making on this year's team, but also what may happen with some other linebacker targets in the 2019 class. We talked about Malachi Moore, the new DB commitment out of Hewitt-Trussville, giving Alabama 4 Hewitt-Trussville kids committed in the 2019 and 2020 classes. We talked about the top 10, the updated Rivals top 10. Now we're going to get together again later on this week. I plan on doing another video on Friday just to discuss the updated Rivals 100 and Rivals 250. We'll look at who are some of the other Alabama targets commitments who made that list, who got snubbed, who may be ranked too high. So we'll talk about that later on this week. Maybe Alabama will get another commitment between now and then. Who knows? But that's probably going to be it for right now. I'll go in and let's see. I'll answer one more question. Whatever happened to Kendall Jones, big time recruit about 2 years ago? Well, if you've seen any of the recent photos, you've kind of seen that he's certainly gained a lot of weight. I don't know I don't know exactly what junior college he's at right now. I think he was at a junior college in Texas or maybe in Mississippi. I can't remember exactly where he was, but I don't see him ending up back at Alabama. I mean, wherever he ends up, they've got a lot of work to do in terms of his weight control. But it's not going to be at Alabama. That's that's definitely not going to be the place where I think he ends up. But I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Thank y'all so much for joining. We're going to get this video posted on BamaInsider.com. If you have any more questions, please come to BamaInsider.com. Ask me on the recruiting board. I'm on there every single day answering questions for our subscribers. I know we got a great deal going on right now. A good promo with sign up for a year subscription. You get $99 worth of gear, Nike gear, which includes all those new coaches polos that look pretty sweet. So you guys come on the board, check out the website. Tony and Kyle locking it down on the regarding fall practice, and I've got everything on the recruiting side. So thank you guys for joining, and I will see you later on this week.